What happens when a quiet impression in a BYU classroom refuses to leave you alone? On today's episode of Successful Saints, you'll meet Shelle Soelberg. She's a mother of 5 and creator of Let's Play Music, a program that helps parents and children learn the piano together. We talk about how she recognized that special prompting, the tidal wave of growth that followed, and how she built a business that protects both her family and her faith. Welcome to the podcast, Shelle. We're glad you're here. How about we get started by having you introduce yourself?
Great. My name's Shelle Soelberg, and I am a mother of 5 children. My husband, Dave, and I live in Mesa, Arizona, and I am the creator of Let's Play Music, and it all started at BYU, and I hope we can get into that.
Yeah, well, let's jump right back into that. Take us to the moment when it all started. When did you start Let's Play Music, and what was the inspiration?
So it actually all started way before it started because it was actually as a student at BYU in Susan Kenny's music education for elementary years. And I'm not kidding. I really did sit there as she taught me about Zoltan Kodály, Karl Orff, Emil Jacques Dalcroze. They were 20th century music educators who reformed music education. And as I learned about their philosophies and had questions about, well, who teaches this? Who does this? Where can I find the method? Who has put this all together? It was, well, not really anyone, and not really. I really did have a moment where I thought, this is what I'm doing then. This is exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to put all these ideas together, and I am going to create a curriculum that does it right. Because these educators really do it differently. They use the innate skills and characteristics of children and teach music in a way that a children learns rather than the way we try to teach them. So that's the moment it happened. That was in 1988 at BYU in the Harris Fine Arts Center. That's no more. And then it didn't actually start until 10 years later in 1998 when I had a 3-year-old daughter. And thought, oh my gosh, it's time for me to do this. It's time for me to put that curriculum together. It's go time. So I pushed go in 1998 and started teaching my first classes.
So you first noticed and you had some inspiration of like, oh, this is what I want to do, but you held off on actually executing, probably gathering thoughts and letting it formulate. Then when you had your own child, that was when you're like, all right, it is time. When you were trying to decide that, what was the process of deciding that between you and your husband and seeking revelation about what to do? Because that's a big change.
It was a big change. I was teaching private piano lessons and voice lessons. So I was in the home teaching lessons anyway. And when I thought, oh, okay, it's time to write this curriculum, we didn't realize that it would be the effort that it was. I knew it was going to be a big taker of my time because I understood the scope of the project. And we talked about it. And I said, I really want to write this curriculum. I really think our daughter, Sydney, and lots of other children would benefit from the way this would help them to love music and just bring their best self out through music. I devised the first few lessons and got ready to teach it. And I wrote this welcome letter. I put it in an envelope and I put a stamp on them. This is how we did things in 1998. I took them out to the mailbox and I had an overwhelming rush, sort of like a tidal wave. That's the best way I can describe it. A tidal wave feeling of this is going to be big. It felt like a warning. It felt like a careful. So I didn't put the letters in the mailbox. I went back inside and I said, Dave, this is what I just felt out there. And he said, well, let's wait a minute and see how you feel in the morning. So in the morning, I said, okay, I think I can do this. He said, you can do this. You can do this. You were meant to do this. So with some pulling up my bootstraps, I went outside and I put them in the mailbox. And it's true. It was a tidal wave. It was a lot. And but I felt like, Dave was behind me and I knew I could do it with the help of the Savior. I went back to that feeling 10 years before and I thought, this is my calling. I'm supposed to do this and it's not going to be easy. I knew it was not going to be easy, but I thought I I can do this.
That's really cool. Those decisions are quite memorable, especially when you're like, "Oh man, like this is something I'm meant to be doing and this just feels right." And then that moment when you realized, "Oh, this is going to change my path." I remember with my first business when I decided to become an entrepreneur, I was actually doing something completely different. I was running an outdoor gear
Oh,
website.
wow. Okay.
And then I was approached by someone who was asking me some questions about marketing attribution, and it was in that moment that I was like, "This is what I need to do." And it was overwhelming. It was like, like it was a big shift. I shut down my outdoor gear website, which ironically got the biggest order it ever got the day I shut it down.
Oh, interesting.
And it was an intense moment. So that's really cool to hear your story there. What doubts did you face upon this realization and after deciding, yes, I'm going to do this?
Part of what encouraged me to move forward was the response I got when I sent out those letters. There were so many people that I loved and respected that said, "Oh, I've been looking for something like this. This is exactly what I'm hoping for. I really want this for me and my child." I think music is so much more than sending your kid to a lesson and having them sit on the bench with a piano teacher. I want to use this to bond with my child. I had so many people with that type of response, so that really helped. And my patriarchal blessing said that I would be a light and a strength to those who were alone, those who were afraid, and those whose confidence needed strengthening. And I could feel that happening in the lessons. And as I started training teachers, I could really feel that that's exactly what was happening to people through their participation in this program. So a lot of different things kind of kept me thinking, no, this is what I need to do. Because I really wouldn't say there were many easy moments. There still aren't. I mean, I'm 26 years into this business and it still isn't easy. There's a lot. I guess I had enough feelings of keep going, spiritual and the external sources of my parents, not my biological parents, the parents that were in the program, the teachers that kept saying, "This is exactly what I've needed. This answers my prayers. This is what is going to keep me afloat in one way or another."
So as you've gotten that feedback and those additional ways that you've been able to uplift it, how have you used this program and your overall talents of music to be able to share the gospel?
So I feel like the ways that I and our teachers can share the gospel, some of our teachers are members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Some of them are not, but there are some foundational gospel principles that are woven into the structure and the curriculum. And I think most of that is evident in the fact that it's parent-led and parent-based. In the beginning, when I said, yeah, parents attend this class with their child, and I had a lot of people say, well, I'm not going to be able to come then. I need to be able to drop my child off, or that you're not going to be able to grow this business because people want to be able to drop their child off at their lessons. And I really stuck to it. I really said, no, this is a purposeful parent program. I knew that the most powerful teaching comes from the parent and the home, and that the parent is the most influential teacher in a child's life. So the parents attend the lesson so they can become the teacher at home. And so the music doesn't just exist in the classroom, it comes into the home. So one of the things that I just knew had to be part of the program was, in the beginning I called it a home study cassette, because they were cassette tapes in 1998. So I knew that they had to have recordings of all of the music so it would be in their home. And I just feel like that element of the structure of the program is a way that the gospel is taught, because the family is the central organization in Heavenly Father's plan. And I feel like that was implemented. And I was certainly guided in that, because as a 29-year-old, when I started this, I didn't have the full understanding of parents and family and the influence, because I was a young parent myself. But as I've gained wisdom in the last 26 years, I've just thought, that was a great idea to insist that parents attend. And I have to say that obviously the idea didn't really come from me. It was something that the Lord needed in this program, because he knew that the families needed that. And it's just really crucial to the success of the program, but to the success of the child and the family.
That's really cool that your program brings people together, like the parents
Yeah.
and the child.
Yeah.
Uh, that's that's a tough commitment sometimes for the parents, but
It
it is
totally.
meaningful
We
in
hear it all the
when the
time.
parents are involved.
Yeah. They say, this is really hard. Do I really have to come? And we say, yes, but you will say yes.
I guess that makes a lot of sense, having it be home centered. But like when you think about sports, parents have to go to the games a lot of times, or well, they don't have to, but it's highly encouraged that they go to the games, and
It is.
so that makes a lot of sense in this approach. So you built this with families in mind and being able to bring parents and children together, and you felt like that was a driving force. With your own family, what were the changes you had to make, and how did you balance the work life with raising your family and with running a company and doing your calling?
Honestly, it was hard, and I think that balance is an elusive term. I don't know that I ever felt, "Oh, we're balanced. This is great." I really don't know that I ever felt that. The pragmatic, practical choices that we made were that I taught lessons as much as possible when my children were taking naps. They were great nappers. All of my kids napped in the morning, in the afternoon. So I scheduled my classes during nap times. And as they got a little bit older, during school times when I could. And then as they got a little bit older, I started taking just one afternoon a week where I would teach because they were in school all day. And when they came home, I wanted to be there with them. So I would only take one afternoon per day where I taught lessons and they got to go to grandma's house or a special friend's house or something like that. So that's how we practically approached that stress on the schedule. And I did most of my writing and working and teacher training and writing the training programs. I did most of that at night and I was tired, but that's when I did it.
That'd be exhausting.
It was. It was utterly, utterly exhausting because I had four more children after I had my first child and started this. I had four more. So I did all of this while having children, while nursing, while having late nights. And I got really good at nursing and typing on my computer. I was a champ.
Yeah, I'm just trying to imagine us trying to do that. That'd be a lot to balance in our family.
Tricky
Were
times, tricky times.
were there ever moments where you kind of had to make a decision of, all right, well, I'm going to put this down so I can spend time with the family, or were there other moments where you're like, okay, well, we're going to have to make accommodations so we can make this work?
Absolutely, all the time. All the time. I remember having a layout for what tasks I needed to get completed by X date, and I would have it portioned off. So I knew today I do this, tomorrow I do this, tomorrow I do this. And then I would have a child get sick, or I would have a child with a project, or there would be a family need. And I remember just gulping and praying and saying, "Okay, I'm not sticking to my schedule and I can feel the pressure mounting and I'm going to need some extra help." So, yeah, it was really a state of constant tension and guidance and pressure. It was hard. But yeah, I made lots of decisions where I said, this is going to have to go on the shelf right now.
How did you fight off the temptation to dive too much into seeking success?
Honestly, success in those years was not at all my goal. Not at all. It was just in meeting the needs of the teachers I was training and the parents in the program. Honestly, success and a business, it didn't even feel like a business to me until much, much later, like probably 10 years later in the 2007, 8, 9 years. By that time, all of my children were in school and I could treat it more like a business. And that's when I started thinking about success and let's get this to be our family business and support us economically. Prior to that, in the early mother years, I didn't think of it as being a success. I thought of it as meeting the needs, getting this program on paper and working so that teachers can teach it the way it was intended, writing the lesson plans to the letter. There are 90 lesson plans and there are over 500 pages of written content to make sure the lessons are taught exactly right. And that's what I was obsessed with doing. So I just had to work really hard to fit it in where I could. And I asked Heavenly Father to magnify my hours and to help my mind think clearly and to help me to work efficiently and effectively to get it out of my brain onto paper, because that was what I had to do in those years.
What were some of the moments when you were directed to kind of turn? A lot of times in life, it's not a straight path. What
No.
were those moments where you felt directed to turn? And give us a little bit more of a glimpse into what you felt at that time.
So there was a time when we had about 40 teachers teaching for us. And that would have been in about 2005 or six, which means my baby was 2 or 3. So I had all these kiddos in school and wasn't having a baby. But I remember thinking, having the goal, let's get 40 more teachers this year. Let's double. Let's, start growing this as a business. It's time. I'm going to actually go out and try to recruit teachers, and we're going to double our teachers this year. And again, I sort of felt that tidal wave feeling of, oh, do you really want to do that right now? Is that really, is that wise right now? And it kind of felt overwhelming and murky for me. So again, I talked to my husband and said, what do you think? Should we go for it? Should we start actually advertising? I'd never advertised until that point. It had all grown by word of mouth. And he said, let's just wait. Let's just wait and think and put a pause on that. And my baby, actually, we had already seen that she was delayed in some ways. She was in some programs. We didn't exactly know what her issues were, but she was delayed. She was about 2 or 3. And it was soon after that a neighbor said, I think you need to have your child evaluated by the state. So I did that. I had an Arizona representative come to my home and evaluate my child. And she said, your child has serious cognitive and physical and physiological delays, and you need to enroll her in this course, which cost about $3,000 a semester, which we did not have. And she was in my home and watching me, and she happened to see me preparing a lesson. And she said, wait, are you a music teacher? And I said, yes, I am. And she said, well, we need a music teacher at this. It was the Arizona State University Phonology School that she recommended for my daughter. She said, if you could teach there, we'll waive your tuition. So I proceeded to take the next 2 years and not build my business. And I taught music at the ASU Phonology School so my daughter could attend for free. And my husband and I said, that was a good move, that we didn't pursue the business, because we didn't know at the time that she was going to have, now we know she has brain damage from in utero, but things unfold that you don't know about. And we were thankful for that wave of wait and see, wait a minute, let's check. So that kind of put things on hold for a couple of years while I put more attention into teaching. And so my daughter could benefit from that school that we never could have afforded.
That's really cool. That's an unexpected story and a pivot that you had to make. But
Yeah.
hindsight, you're like, how do you hindsight? How do you feel that helped you moving forward?
I learned a lot by teaching at that school. It was amazing to be in a different format where I taught children from ages 1 to 7 that were nonverbal, and some were on the autism spectrum, some had cerebral palsy, and they all had their parents with them who were loving and concerned and caring. And it was in a very professional, clinical environment, and bringing music into that environment and helping people to heal and feel the music was inspirational. I loved it.
So in general conference just this weekend, there was the talk about primary music and
Mhm.
using music to teach children. What were your thoughts as you were listening to that?
I did not listen because I was on a sister's retreat, but I had several people texting me saying, you have to read this talk. It's so good. Primary music, especially, is the essence of the gospel. The words, the simplification, the bringing of the gospel into a simple childlike phrase is magical. And then, of course, when the music is added, music brings messages into the heart and mind that the spoken word cannot do alone. And I know Heavenly Father intended it to be that way. There are studies now that literally say that I'm not just speaking pretty words. It's actually a fact that when a concept is introduced with music and enters into the oral processing centers, it affects the emotional state and causes that message to have a deep residual presence. So, primary music is exactly the way we should all learn the gospel. It's such a powerful medium for learning, and especially for learning by the Spirit. We know that the Spirit speaks through our feelings, and music speaks through our feelings. So, just as the Spirit is a medium for teaching, music is a medium for teaching. And this just isn't by accident. This entire world and all of the experiences in it were specifically designed by our heavenly parents. And that's why we have music. It's one of the reasons we have music. So I absolutely love primary music. I've been primary chorister for more years than I can count. And I love it. It is a powerful calling with a powerful purpose.
So I've read some recent studies about teenagers and how much music they listen to.
Yeah.
What kind of impact do you think that has on their spirituality if they are choosing good and faithful music versus music that isn't quite so wholesome?
That's such a tricky question. And I would have answered it differently 30 years ago than I would now, because I have gone through the teenage and young adult years with my children now. They're between the ages of 30 and 22 right now. So they've moved through the adolescent years, and they have said, "Mom, you were way too strict with our music in high school." I think I really enjoyed that music. It made me happy. It helped me release emotions. And you tried to tell me that it was not good music, or it wasn't the most uplifting, because personally I listen to classical and church music almost exclusively. It's just what I like. So their choices differed from mine, and I was kind of hard on them, and gave them lots of lectures and showed them lots of data and research, and showed them how they could be smarter if they listened to Mozart. And of course, as teenagers, you don't always agree with your children, and we didn't always agree. But I've loosened up a little on that. I can see the joy that a good upbeat song can bring to a person's heart and mood and mind. And I'm never going to say that spiritual music isn't the best, because it is, for bringing us closer to heaven. But I've opened up my heart to different kinds of music, and the power that all music can be for all of God's children. I think that it's an incredibly powerful force, and that there are creatives outside the church and in the Broadway realm and the pop realm that are inspired by God to create music that's going to lift and inspire his children, and that's going to touch them in ways that they need. And it might not be spiritual or classical, but his children need to hear him and need to hear joy. And I think that many artists are inspired.
I think music can be pretty powerful and used for good and for bad. My brain tends to focus a little bit on the bad just because I'm like, oh man, there's just a lot of the music that's really not that good.
Right.
But one of the things I've discovered in my adult life, because I tend to listen to much more upbeat, happy, positive message music, which I don't regret. But about 2 years ago, I was going through a really bad depression, and I was just really struggling. And I felt inspired to create a playlist. I realized when I get anxiety and when I get depression, I actually tend to cut off music. Probably because I listen to happy, upbeat music, and I'm just not in the mood for that when I have a lot of anxiety. But I actually created this playlist called my emotional shot playlist. And actually, some of the music was quite depressing.
Mm-hmm.
But it really helped me work through my emotions. And I did a mix of hopeful messages and sometimes just messages that I just needed to just like get some emotions out.
Exactly.
And that was something that really helped me to be able to process my emotions and think more clearly and really have some opportunity to reflect.
Right.
And especially when the music helped me put words to what I was feeling. Because sometimes you just don't know until like you listen to it. You're like, oh, that's what's happening. And so that was one experience that really touched me in my life of music, was just realizing that not all music has to be happy and upbeat, but I've definitely appreciated the power of messages within music. And that's why I think like the hymns and the primary songs are just so powerful in that regard.
They're so powerful. And there's actually research that has come out in the last about 10 years that shows us that emotions are felt as vibrations in our body. And obviously, music is vibrations. So the science is now stating that music helps us process emotion. Music therapists have known this for years, but now the science is actually giving us a physiological reason for the fact that music helps us process our emotions. And that's similar to what I just heard you say, Scott, that you were able to process through some not positive emotions, but the music helped you to feel it. It helped you to wash through, feel the depth of the emotion or the height of the emotion. And we just can't deny that this is purposeful on the part of our heavenly parents, that music was given to us to guide us to them.
Shifting gears a little bit, during your years of motherhood and trying to do the constant balance of, as Elder Bednar put it, spinning plates, what lessons in from motherhood did you take and apply it to leadership?
So many great lessons, partly because I was raising my children at the same time I was teaching my lessons. It coincided perfectly. But I think one that stands out to me that I tell all the time, I learned the power of agency and will in my class. And this is how it happened. My classes are group piano classes, right? And by the time they get to the pianos, when they first start out, they don't play piano the first year. Their parents come with them and they're little and they don't play piano. But the second year, they start playing pianos and the parents don't come every week. So you have these, 5 and 6 year olds on these keyboards, and I've got 7 kids who are in front of their keyboards. And I mean, it can be cacophony, mayhem, chaos.
I can imagine.
And I thought it was so smart because I had a light switch in my music studio that flipped the switch to the power outlets. So all of my keyboards were plugged in and managed by that power switch. And I thought, ooh, I'm such a smarty. I can turn all of their keyboards off at once and they won't have any control at all. This will be perfect. So I taught for probably a whole year that way. When they were playing and going crazy, I would just turn it off and they couldn't touch their keyboards. And then I started noticing that as they would watch me, and as soon as I flipped that switch, the mayhem broke out, and I couldn't teach them to govern themselves because I had the power. So then I thought, okay, I got to rethink this. And I taught them that they had the power to govern themselves. And I said, do you see that on off switch on your keyboard? And the whole first lesson, we practiced turning on and off that power switch on the keyboard. And I said, you are the one who controls this keyboard. And you can turn it on or off, and you can keep your hands off or on. We practiced that, and I taught them to govern themselves. And the difference it made in my classes, when they would get out of line and start playing, I would say, who wants to be the boss of themselves? And they would put their hands up and they were like, I got this. And the power of agency that I felt and the beauty of the plan of our Father that I witnessed there, we really, really have to be agents to ourselves. And then, of course, as I was learning that principle so dramatically in my classes, I was learning to apply that to my motherhood. And I was learning to say, I'm going to give you the power to be your agent. I'm going to teach you carefully where your on off switches are. And I'm going to help you recognize that you are the one that governs yourself. And it was such a powerful experience that, like I said, I've shared over and over and over again. And I see it play out in so many situations. But that gift of agency is a true principle.
That's a powerful lesson to learn there. I
Yeah,
think a lot of us could apply that into our own lives of like, oh,
everywhere, right? It's so universal.
what's another lesson that comes to mind that you learned from motherhood that then helped drive your story in both business and in general?
Yeah. So with 5 children, we joke that they are as different as 5 children could possibly be. They are extremely unique, each one, and none of the parenting approaches that we worked with one child worked with another ever. They were very, very unique. And that was something that was constantly shown to me. And the Spirit would impress that upon my heart and my mind as I would try to pigeonhole one child into another's path. And it was something that I know the Spirit was teaching me to remember the unique and precious nature of each child, that every person has their own set of characteristics, their own identity, their own perspective, their own challenges, and we are all so unique. So I know that if I hadn't had 5 children that were so different, I might not have understood that. And I feel like applying that in life and in business when we have employees or teachers or parents or students or anyone, it's a wonderful lesson to learn about the uniqueness and the preciousness of each soul as we interact with them.
As you've been going through this process of growth and learning in your business, was there ever guilt in pursuing both motherhood and pursuing growing your business or this mission that you felt? And how did you reconcile that?
Constant questioning, probably sometimes guilt, but constant questioning. How much should I be doing? Is this too much? Are my children suffering? Am I off the path? Am I not pursuing my most important role? Am I getting sidetracked by the adversary? Am I constant questioning, constant asking the Lord, am I doing this right? Am I on your errand or am I listening to my own ambition? What am I doing? And I answered this question a little bit before, how I carefully structured my work during nap times and other times. But one thing that I did that I felt gave me some peace and helped me to feel a bit reconciled toward this dilemma was that I called it my time tithing. And I would spend the first part of my day once the kids were off for school or once the morning routine is over, whatever that was, usually 8 or 8:30, I would set aside my time, my tithing, and I would pay my consecrated time to the Lord in meditation, journaling, scripture study, and prayer. And and then I would ask him to guide me and make sure that I made good choices through the day and I would be able to pay attention to the choices that were in my path and that I would be able to do what he needed me to do and that he would help me work efficiently and effectively and maximize the time of my day because I purposefully gave him my first bit of time in the morning.
Love that. I love that idea of the time tithing. Thank you for sharing. I know that's something that a lot of us experience, and I know there's a moment when I was questioning, like, oh, like, am I doing enough? And my bishop told me, he's like, Scott, you're doing better than you think.
Right?
And that was a
That
critical
was the
moment
Lord.
for me because
Yeah.
it was hard. It was hard. I was like, am I even doing the right thing? Like, what am I doing? um,
Right.
but it,
Well, and that was specifically from a talk by Elder Holland, probably about 15 or 20 years ago when I was there. And he said, Mothers, you're doing better than you think. And I remember wanting to hold on to that and say, Thank you. I needed that.
well, Shelley, I want to let you know you're doing better than you think.
And maybe I did better than I think because those years are over now. My children are gone, and I come to the office 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, and those days are behind me. Now I actually have an office, but those years of the joyful juggle, as it's been called, are really hard. And I don't think I can actually say it was ever fully reconciled. I think every day and every moment we're full of, am I doing this right? Am I am I just massively messing this up? It was hard.
And looking back, where have you seen the Lord's hand most clearly in your life?
I have seen the Lord's hand in my life the most when I've needed him the most. That's when he shows up. And I did need him a lot in those years just to strengthen me, to give me the extra clarity of mind, the extra surge of strength, whether it was emotional, physical, intellectual, so that I could complete the tasks that were before me. I felt him strengthen me in those times. And in the business, I specifically felt the influence of a creative genius that was beyond my own when I would wake up with songs in my head. I literally woke up singing a song that wasn't ever written, and I would write it down and write it out and go, that's brilliant. That is an amazing song that perfectly fits in this semester, that perfectly teaches the concept of skips or key signatures. And I just thought, really? Really? You just let me have that? And those were some miraculous moments. And those were some of the moments that reminded me that I was doing his errand and that I was working in that corner of the vineyard where he needed me because the days were so difficult and the tasks were so heavy that when I had those flashes of pure genius, I mean it was beyond my ability. And I just thought, thank you for that flash of creative genius, just reminding me that the Lord is the creator of all good, and he is present in so many different ways.
What would your advice be to someone who feels that divine nudge to build and to do something, but feels a little too scared and they feel like they're a little too small to take on that challenge? What would your advice for them be?
I think we are all too small to take on the challenge, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't go forth and do it. So, as we yoke ourselves to Christ and say, I can't do this, but I know you can. If you will guide me, I will do it. That's the big answer. The little answer is say a prayer, sit down, and decide the first step. Decide what the first step is. And if you have to break that first step down into 10 mini steps, break it down into 10 mini steps, and then do the first step. Usually, our motivation and our clarity comes once we begin. So, beginning is what you have to start with, which sounds silly. Let's start at the very beginning, a very good place to start. But figuring out what the first step is and then doing it is what has to be done. And then once that first step is done, you sit down again, you pray again, and you decide what are the next 5 steps I need to do. And if they feel overwhelming and you feel yourself putting it off, you feel that procrastination or the avoidance or the paralyzation sneaking in, and you think, I haven't done anything for about 2 weeks. Sit down and say, what's holding me back? Maybe I haven't broken that first step down into small enough bites yet. Because these things can feel like an elephant, and actually they are. And learning to break things down into manageable bite-sized chunks really is the secret to success. So if you aren't doing it, that tells you the first bite isn't small enough. So learn how to break things down into micro tasks, ask the Lord to help you, and then do the task. Do it.
That's wonderful advice. For those that, as we're wrapping up, for those that want to continue to follow your story, how can they best keep up with the rest of your story?
Yeah, thanks. A lot of what our business is on our website. So it's letsplaymusicsite.com. And my story personally is probably best seen on my Instagram and Facebook, because that's where I post about what I'm doing with my family and my children and my business and my spirituality and my journey. That's where I am personally. So it's just Shelle Soelberg on Instagram and Facebook. And our blog has really great stories. Some of the stories that I've told here today are on our blog. We post personal stories about children who have been in emotional trauma and have sat in our classes and been healed during a musical encounter. We have personal stories there, and our blog gives a lot of the personal application that our program brings to people's lives. So if someone's interested in becoming a teacher or becoming a student, our website's the place. If you just want to learn about what we do, our blog is the place. And if you just want to be my friend, come be my friend. Come see what I'm doing.
Awesome. Well, thanks for being on the podcast.
It was a pleasure. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you for listening to Successful Saints and spending this time with us today. Shelle Soelberg's experience reminds us that when we honor small spiritual nudges and are willing to take one faithful step at a time, the Lord can turn naptime projects and late night work into a calling that blesses thousands of parents and children. If this episode encouraged you, share it with someone who needs that reminder, and subscribe so you do not miss the next conversation on faith, leadership, and building the kingdom.